Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm back to take a final look at this Week 14 NFL DFS slate on Draftkings. Before we get into it, if you could please leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future content that I upload. That would be greatly appreciated. And I have released multiple Patreon packages over there on Patreon where you can get access to my projections, rankings, cheat sheets, all of my data sheets, some really good tools to help you with your lineups, help you be better, and support me with some further content. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start breaking down this slate. We're going to get into it positionally, go position by position, give you some value plays. I'm going to try to give you guys some good plays in multiple price tiers. Some reasoning as to why I like the guy. Maybe I like him more in cash. Maybe I like him more in GPPs. This is more geared towards tournaments, more of a GPP video, as always, most of my content is. But we're going to break it down multiple price tiers for you guys so you can have that flexibility, be able to build multiple lineups, have multiple builds. And before we get into the position by position breakdown, I will say the injury report this week is absolutely crazy. So there might be some stuff that comes out after this video that I can't quite touch on just because of the craziness that the injury report is this week. So don't forget to follow me over on Twitter at KJK_DFS, where I'll tweet as many tweets out as possible. And then as far as my Patreon package is concerned, if you're interested in that, I do have a private Discord chat. You can hop in the Discord chat, join all my other Patreons and myself, and ask me any questions all the way up until lock. So just a little bit of a disclaimer there. The injury report is crazy this week. But with that being said, let's go ahead and start breaking down this slate, breaking it down positionally, giving you guys some good plays, and we're going to start with the quarterback position. At the quarterback position this week, it all starts with Mr. Patrick Mahomes, as it seems to oftentimes, because, I mean, let's be honest, the guy's just an absolute fantasy stud. Comes in with a 28.25 implied total for his team, 7-point favorite against the Dolphins, currently with a 49.5 over-under. And I will say, this isn't exactly the best matchup taken on this Miami Dolphins team. They're actually the 24th best team to target in terms of QB, so, it's not like he has the greatest matchup in the world, but it's Patrick Mahomes. He's capable of getting it done against anyone. And looking at how he's fared so far on the year, you can see he has 38.5 pass attempts per game, 125.8 true passer rating. Protection rate at an 84, decent. The O-line could be a little better, but not terrible. 180.2 air yards per game for him, 4.7 air yards attempt, 50 deep balls, you love to see that, and 58 red zone attempts with a 62.1 red zone completion percentage. So, I mean, no surprise looking at his stats. He's very involved in the offense. They got him involved early and often. Throwing the deep ball, throwing the ball in the red zone, looking at his volume, the last 4 weeks, 40, 49, 45, and 45 attempts. So you love to see that. And you get the full package with Patrick Mahomes. And like I said, not the best matchup, but if anything, when I'm playing Patrick Mahomes, that just means he might be some lower ownership and maybe more of a sneaky play than he typically would be, because he's always got the name value. He's always got people wanting to play him. But in a tougher matchup, you might be able to get him at lower ownership than you typically would. Next guy, Aaron Rodgers. If I'm dropping down a little more, get to the Detroit Lions. I absolutely love Aaron Rodgers this week. I absolutely love some of these Packers weapons. We'll get into that as we go along further in the video. 7.5 point spread, 55 over under, very high over under in this one. 31.25 implied total for the Green Bay Packers. And the Detroit Lions secondary does not scare me whatsoever. The 9th best team to target in terms of QBs, giving up approximately 19.8 DK points a game. I shouldn't say approximately, they are giving up 19.8 DK points a game. And yeah, they don't scare me. So I do definitely like Aaron Rodgers in this one. As far as his involvement and all he does, I mean, no surprise. Once again, an elite quarterback, 34.5 pass attempts per game, 129.9 true passer rating, actually tops Patrick Mahomes in that category, 7.7 accuracy rating, 90 protection rate. So the O-line has been very, very good for Aaron Rodgers. You love to see that. Give it plenty of time to throw. 60 deep ball attempts, going deep a ton, and a ton of red zone attempts as well, with a 67.8 red zone completion percentage. So when he gets in the red zone, not only is he throwing, but he's converting. The full package, 7,500 this week on DraftKings. I absolutely love him. Looking at his attempts the last 4 weeks, 34, 29, 38, and 34. Hasn't really had a huge upside game since that 29 spot in Week 10 against Jacksonville, and he was priced at 7.9 in that one. We've seen his price dip down to 7, 6.7, 6.8. Now he's up to 7.5, but in this matchup, I don't care. I like him a ton. Get him in your lineups. He's the second guy that I would definitely be playing. Tom Brady in this Minnesota-Tampa Bay game. I think I'm going to have some interest in this one this week. Comes in with a 51.5 over-under, 29 implied total for Tom and his crew. And the Minnesota Vikings aren't the worst secondary in the world, but they're definitely not the best. 18th best team to target in terms of QBs, so I do like Tom Brady. Feel pretty comfortable stacking him up with some of his options. And looking at how he's fared on the year, he actually has 39.5 pass attempts per game, second most out of any of the QBs that I'm promoting behind Justin Herbert. 99.8 true passer rating, 88 protection rate, plenty of time to throw behind this O-line, 172 air yards per game, 65 deep ball attempts, and 74 red zone attempts as well. The most out of any QB on this list. A ton of red zone attempts from Tom Brady this year. So, those are the reasons that I'm interested. Comes in at a 6.9 price tag. 41, 48, 39, and 38 attempts his last 4 weeks. He had 34.84 DK points against Carolina in Week 10, but the last 2 weeks he hasn't been. 26.7 DK points isn't terrible, but I think we could see him get back up in that 30-point range this week in this, high total pace game, or high total game of the 51.5 over under. Speaking of high pace games, this next one I definitely have a ton of interest in. Justin Herbert and the Los Angeles Chargers going to take on the Atlanta Falcons, and my model really likes this game as far as a pace. 73 projected snaps for the Chargers, 69 for the opposing team, 71 projected snaps, as an average, and 23.25 implied total for Justin Herbert's team. And yeah, that just really everything matches up. Not to mention, he literally has the best possible matchup that you could have. The Falcons are the #1 team to target in terms of QBs, giving up 24.6 DK points a game to the QB position. So I definitely like Justin Herbert. And as mentioned earlier, he does have the most pass attempts per game out of any of the QBs that I mentioned. 40.2 pass attempts per game. You love to see that. We need volume in our quarterbacks that we're playing. 49.1 pressure to completion percentage, 47 deep ball attempts, 56 red zone attempts. Kind of the full package. Not to mention, literally the best matchup. I already did mention it. So, yeah, I definitely have some interest in Justin Herbert this week. Definitely have some interest in the Chargers offense. After putting up a brutal performance against the Pats last week, getting blown out 45-0, I think that the Chargers are going to come out and get some real good revenge here as far as, their offense is concerned, because I don't think these Atlanta Falcons are going to be able to slow them down. So I definitely have interest in Justin Herbert this week. Ryan Tannehill in this Tennessee-Jacksonville game. Tennessee-Jacksonville comes with a 53 over-under, 7-point favorites for Tannehill and the gang, 30 implied total. A guy that I was really high on last week, promoted him. He went out there and put up a big game, and I think he can continue with this week against Jacksonville because they don't have a very good secondary. 4th best team to target in terms of QBs. Ryan Tannehill's stats aren't exactly the most impressive, Not getting a ton of pass attempts per game with Derrick Henry in the backfield. 4.5 air yards per attempt is decent, though. And he has been getting surprisingly decent red zone volume because when you have a guy like Derrick Henry that you're handing the ball off to so often, and you're still getting a pretty decent amount of attempts, that stands out as being fairly impressive to me. And he comes in at a 6.7 price tag this week after putting up 31.56 DK points. I think we could see a very similar performance this week against this Jacksonville Jaguars team. Doesn't really concern me. He's got some great weapons on the outside in A.J. Brown and his other counterparts, so I'm not too worried. Hopefully Jonnu Smith will be back this week at the tight end position to give him another weapon. We'll have to keep an eye on that one. But, yeah, Ryan Tannehill, definitely interested in him. Kirk Cousins on the other side of the Tampa Bay game. I had mentioned Tom Brady. I definitely like Kirk Cousins. 51.5 over-under, 22.5 implied total. They're 6.5-point dogs. What does that mean? They're going to have to play from behind the game. So that means that I like Kirk Cousins even more just because of the fact that he's going to be trailing. 29.2 pass attempts per game. That's the least out of any of the QBs that I'm promoting. He has a very bad protection rate from the O-line, so the O-line's not getting it done for him. That's unfortunate. But when looking at the QB matchup chart, the Buccaneers are the 13th best team to target in terms of QB, so he does have a good matchup this week. And like I said, I do anticipate them being behind, and he's going to have to go deep, and he does have 5.2 air yards per attempt, so he's throwing the ball down the field, 45 deep ball attempts, 67.5 red zone completion percentage with 40 attempts. So, he does have the ability to throw on the field. I think he's going to have to throw on the field in this one because anytime a guy is an underdog on the spread, that gives us that little extra boost of confidence that we could see a few more pass attempts from him than we normally would. 28, 34 completions the last 2 weeks, 43, 45, 30, and 36 attempts. 45 and 43 attempts the last 2 weeks. We like to see that. A guy that's throwing it very often, and he hasn't really got that big of a price increase. As a matter of fact, his price actually went down. And he's been putting up mid-20s to 30 DK points. So I think that you're getting a very fair price on Kirk Cousins. I think the game script matches up. I think he's a great play this week. And I think he's definitely got some weapons on the outside, and Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. Matt Ryan, a guy that's been kind of struggling so far in the year. I do think you could play him this week, 5,700, taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. As I had already mentioned, I project this game to move at a very quick pace. A lot of snaps to be had. 49 over under, 25.75 implied total for Matt Ryan's team. 2.5-point favorite, so expected to be a pretty close game. And this Los Angeles Chargers secondary does not scare me. Sixth best team to target in terms of QBs. And Matt Ryan, as I said, doesn't have the best stats. But as far as I'm concerned, this is a great spot for him to get back on track. And we could see maybe some lower ownership than we typically would. 38.8 pass attempts per game, 189 air yards per game. 62 red zone attempts, 53 deep ball attempts. As far as volume is concerned, as far as the opportunity he's getting, everything matches up for him to be a good DFS play. Those are all the statistics that we are looking for when wanting to play our QBs, and I think Matt Ryan displays them. After only putting up 13, 14, and 7 DK points the last 3 weeks, I think we could see his ownership be lower than it should be, which I always love to see. Hop on these guys that have really been struggling. If they're in a good matchup and all the data matches up, the guys throwing the ball on the field, the guys getting work in the red zone. And it's not like we haven't seen what Matty Ice can do. He's an established QB. He's not a rookie or something like that. So I think this is a great spot for him to get back on track here. And I do definitely feel like Matt Ryan is a good play. Matthew Stafford, 3 more QBs as far as who I have interest in. 5,700, 55 over under for his team. 23.75 implied total for Matt Ryan's squad. So 55 over under, 23.75 implied total, and he gets to take on the Green Bay Packers secondary, which isn't exactly, the best matchup. 25th best team to target in terms of QBs, only giving up 17 DK points a game. However, as I had mentioned, you always like to target the guy with the underdog total or the underdog spread, and they are 7.5 underdogs in this one. So the Detroit Lions are expected to be thrown from behind, and I definitely have some interest in Matthew Stafford, a guy that can sling it and a guy that I expect to be throwing it a lot in this one. Does have a questionable tag, as mentioned. There's a ton of questionable tags, but there's a lot of limited participants in the reports. So I feel like it's getting late in the season. They're resting guys up, etc. So as I said, if you're interested in my Patreon package, I do have a Discord chat. You can hop in and ask me, and I will tweet out as much as possible. Follow me over on Twitter at KJK_DFS. But with that being said, 42, 42, 33, 33 attempts the last 4 weeks. So getting the volume, he put up 30.08 points against Chicago last week. Not exactly the best matchup, so he's proved he can do it in bad matchups, and the game script is going to follow suit this week. Andy Dalton gets a little bit of a revenge game, taking on his former team in Cincinnati this week for the Dallas Cowboys. I do like this game quite a bit as well as far as projected pace is concerned in my model, similar to the Chargers-Atlanta game. Got this game projected for a ton of snaps. Andy Dalton comes in at 5.5. I think that's a very reasonable price. 42.5 over-under, not the greatest over-under, which I do think could keep the ownership low, but I'm still interested. The Bengals are the 16th best team to target in terms of QBs, and I just think that Andy Dalton can get it done for you this week for sure at a 5.5 price tag. 48, 35 attempts the last 2 weeks on top of a 32 attempts the week before. So he's getting a ton of volume. I think he's got the tools to get it done. I think that he's got the weapons on the outside, and I think that the revenge narrative could add a little bit of spice to the play, maybe a little extra motive to go out there and really perform against his former team. Jalen Hurts, the last guy that I got to talk about, and probably going to be the shiny new toy, so to speak, this week because he's going to get a start for the Eagles, a 44 over-under with 7-point underdogs, and I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to be excited to play Jalen Hurts, and it makes sense because he's only 5,100, grades out to be a pretty good play in my projection model, and he is going to be playing from behind, so I expect him to get a lot of volume. Only thing is the matchup's not the greatest. The Saints are the 29th best team to target in terms of QBs. Very, very good secondary. Going to make it tough on him, which might be a little bit of a limited appeal to him, but it's the price tag. I mean, when you got a guy that's barely priced above 5-1, he can run, he can throw. A dynamic QB that's expected to run a lot of option plays with Miles Sanders. You got to have interest, and he put up 10 DK points last week when getting subbed in, and I think he could definitely, surpass his 5-1 price tag and offer much more upside than that he's priced for. So, Jalen Hurts, kind of the obvious guy this week, I think. I'm going to be real interested to see how his ownership, pans out. But got to interest him. Got to, tell you that he's a good play because it makes sense. He's only 5'1". He's getting his first start. They're going to be playing from behind. He has a rough matchup, but worst case scenario, I think the Eagles do get down big, and he's just able to throw and pick up some garbage time stats. So you got to like Jalen Hurts this week, and those are my top QBs. Let's go ahead and start breaking down running backs. Looking at my top plays at the running back position this week, it all starts with Mr. Derrick Henry at the top. I had mentioned this game does a high over and under. I have some interest in some of the passing options, but I definitely have interest in Derrick Henry. He's the guy that I'm spending up for if I'm spending up at the running back position for sure. 53 over under, 30 implied total for his team, and he gets a great matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have just not been able to slow down running backs all year long. They're the fourth best team to target in terms of running backs, giving up 28.2 DK points a game. And let's be honest, Derrick Henry is just a share beast, an absolute beast in the backfield. 65.7 snap share percentage. He's got 4.9 yards per carry, 27 juke rate, 73 evaded tackles, 579 yards created, 52.6 yards created per game. Just ridiculous numbers. 2.14 yards created per carry, 12 breakaway runs, and a 4.7 breakaway run rate. So some very, very impressive stats from Derrick Henry. I'm sure most of you aren't surprised by that, but, he's definitely my top guy that I'm wanting to pay up for this week. Not even a doubt. 8.7 price tag. Only put up 6.9 DK points last week, and only saw 15 attempts, but 27 and 28 attempts the 2 weeks before that. I think we're going to see something similar to that this week. I think they're going to get back to, a balanced attack, but the pass is going to open up the run for Derrick Henry. The run from Derrick Henry is going to open up the pass for the Tennessee Titans, so to speak. And I definitely have interest in him this week. Top guy to pay up for on the slate. Next guy is Aaron Jones taking on these Detroit Lions. He gets the very best matchup that you could possibly have against these Detroit Lions. 7.5 point spread for his team. So if they get up, he's going to get more runs. 31.25 implied total. And as mentioned, the Detroit Lions are dreadful against the run. Very first team you want to target. 32.5 DK points a game given up to them. And as far as how Aaron Jones has fared this year, 58.6 snap share percentage. So the only thing is Jamal Williams has been getting in there a little more than I would like. But across the board, 205 yards created, 22 yards created per game, 1.27 yards created per carry with 5 breakaway runs. So, Aaron Jones, we know the talent that he's capable of. We know the volume he's been getting is respectable as of late after, being a little bit up in the air with Jamal Williams share and a little bit still, honestly, but 15 and 17 attempts the last 2 games. He does get enough volume to have the upside at this price tag in the matchup. I think that his elusiveness can really be put on display in this one, both as a pass catching back and on the ground against these Detroit Lions. They just can't defend either, so definitely going to be promoting Aaron Jones, even with a limited volume. I have a feeling that volume is going to tick up this week. Just the Packers are going to know that they have a little bit of an advantage and use his talents. James Robinson, the third guy, getting a ton of volume lately, really all season long, but as of late, really a workhorse running back, taking on these Tennessee Titans who do not scare me at all when it comes to the run. The 7th best team to target, giving up 25.8 DK points a game. And as mentioned, James Robinson's a guy that's been getting a ton of work. Looking at his numbers, he has 75% snap share out there for a ton of snaps. He's got 4.6 yards per carry. He's getting targeted in the pass game. He's got a great juke rate, 60 evaded tackles. He's very elusive, 29.4 yards created per game and 6 breakaway runs. Kind of, the full package as far as I'm concerned. He does have an injury designation, as do many of these players, so we'll have to keep an eye on that one. But he was just limited, so, I tend to think he's going to be fine. They're just limiting him. They're trying to rest him up. They're trying to keep him fresh. I'm not too worried about it. He is the highest price that he has been in a while, but the matchup kind of aligns and the workload aligns. 18, 22, 17, 23 attempts the last 4 weeks. I think he's got plenty of tools to get the job done, and I think he's a good play this week in that Jacksonville Tennessee Titans game that I had mentioned I do have some interest in for all of the weapons. Speaking of the games I have interest in, you're going to see a trend here. Austin Eckler coming to that 7K. And I definitely have interest in him in that Atlanta-Los Angeles Chargers game. 49 over under, 2.5 point underdogs. But Austin Eckler's involvement in this offense is just very impressive. The Atlanta Falcons are the 29th best team to target in terms of running backs, but they have been struggling a little bit more against receiving running backs, which is kind of Austin Eckler's bread and butter. So while they're very good on the ground against opposing running backs, they have given up some statistics to those pass-catching running backs out of the backfield. And that's when Austin Eckler shines the most. And in a PPR format like Draftkings, you got to love to see that because he had 9 targets and 16 targets since returning. That's a lot of targets for a running back, and that's just going to make him a great play, especially only at a 7K price tag. I definitely will continue to play Austin Eckler. Very involved in the pass game, which you love to see. Adds increased upside. Ezekiel Elliott, a guy that's had a very down year, I think can have a great week this week against the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm all on board with the Zeke train. 3.5 point spread, as mentioned, 42.5 over under, 23 implied total for his team. And the Bengals aren't the best matchup, but they're definitely not the worst. 15th best team to target, giving up 23.5 DK points a game. And Zeke is just, not quite putting up the numbers that we are used to seeing Zeke put up. 13, 3, 22, 8 DK points the last 4 weeks. That's been absolutely terrible. 18, 10, 21, and 18 attempts. Not exactly, the highest volume. He was limited at Thursday's walkthrough, but once again, I think he's just a limited participant, and he's going to play. I don't think it's going to be an issue. So I definitely do have interest in Zeke this week. And I do think that with his terrible year, we could see him get lower ownership than normal. I always like to jump on these guys that have been struggling because people like to log into the DraftKings lobby, open up game logs, look at how they fared, and then just exit out if they've been doing bad. So I don't look at it that way. I want to look at the matchup. I want to look at the opportunity, and I think that Zeke has a good opportunity this week. Deandre Swift, the guy I'm hoping that's going to be back because he was an absolute beast when he was in there and healthy. 6,500 with a 55 over under, 23.75 implied total. I think that DeAndre Swift could have a big game in this one if he's able to return. Looking at the latest update on him at 6,500, he was a limited participant in Thursday's practice, back-to-back limited practices, so I think that he will be back in this one most likely. And the work that he was doing was very impressive. 16 attempts his last game in Week 10 with the 25.9 DK points. But just looks real good out there, looks real elusive, and I think he's going to be a real good talent. And as far as the Packers and how they fared against the run, they're the third best team to target, giving up 28.5 DK points a game, so it doesn't scare me there. DeAndre Swift's numbers, 4.7 yards per carry, and then 11.2 yards created per game, 8.6 breakaway run rate with 6 breakaway runs. So the breakaway run rate is what really stands out because he has had limited opportunity. You look at the yards created per game and all that stuff, and it's not that impressive. But I mean, he's just barely getting the full go as being the lead back in this backfield. So I think this breakaway run section is where things get real intriguing because in the short opportunities or the limited opportunities he's had, he's really shown that upside. So I definitely like DeAndre Swift. David Montgomery, a guy that's been a value play the last few weeks and a guy that I'm going to continue to play because he only comes in at 6,500. Definitely have interest in him. 45 over under for this game, and David Montgomery gets a very good matchup against the Houston Texans. Doesn't scare me at all. Second best team to target in terms of running backs, giving up 32.2 DK points a game to the position. And David Montgomery, a guy that's been getting plenty of volume and plenty of red zone work. 27, 28 DK points the last 2 weeks. He had 17 attempts, only 11 attempts against Green Bay, but I do think that the 17 attempts is more so what we're going to see. Looking to get him involved, not to mention his involvement in the pass game. 4, 6, 3, 5 targets the last 4 weeks. Definitely like him in this matchup. Definitely think he can keep it rolling, and he definitely grades out as a good model, a good value in my model, my projections. Like David Montgomery. 3 more guys I'm interested in. Myles Gaskin, taking out the Kansas City Chiefs. 49.5 over under. They are 7-point dogs, but Myles Gaskin, if he's still the full lead dog in that backfield, which I do anticipate him to be, has a pretty good matchup this week against the Kansas City Chiefs, 14th best team. And Myles Gaskin, when he has had the opportunity, has put up some very impressive numbers this year. 21.4 yards created per game, 1.15 created per carry, 32 evaded tackles, 24.6 juke rate. I mean, very solid across the board, comparing him to guys such as Derrick Henry or David Montgomery as far as snap share percentage is concerned. So you love to see that. He's out there for a lot of those snaps his team is out on the field for. And it really comes down to just, the healthiness of everyone else in this backfield. Right now, Myles Gaskin is questionable as well. Limited participant. I think that that's just a limit on his snaps. And we'll have to keep an eye on the other members of this Dolphins backfield if they're healthy. But I anticipate Gaskin to get similar workload to what he did last week. He had 21 attempts, 15 DK points. I mean, for 21 attempts, he didn't even have that big of a high upside game, and his price has gone down to 5.6 compared to 5.9. And I think that, he could have a much bigger game. Only saw 2 targets last week compared to 6, 4, and 5 3 weeks before when he was healthy. So I think he can get more involved in the pass game. I think he's going to get plenty of attempts, lots of volume, and I definitely like Myles Gaskin as a play this week. Gio Bernard, the next guy I want to talk about, taking on these Dallas Cowboys. A good pass-catching back, great for a PPR format like Draftkings. And the Dallas Cowboys, when looking at how they fared against running backs, not doing very good and definitely struggling in the receiving category against running backs. So that's where my appeal increases with Gio Bernard for sure, because I do think that he can go out there and have a big game. And he has been, pretty much letting us down since he got handed over the keys with Joe Mixon being out. And I think that he could go ahead and get it going in this one because he's just been really struggling. The question is whether Mixon's going to be back, though. And when looking at the latest update on him, he won't return to practice and has been ruled out. So, that's no longer a question. So I just wanted to put that in there real quick to make sure we're good to go with Gio. And we are, because no Joe Mixon means exactly what I said. He's going to get the keys. He's going to get all the workload. 12 attempts, 8, 9, 8 the last 4 weeks. Not getting a ton of carries, but 2, 3, 5, 7 targets. And once again, the guy that struggled, the guy that's getting all the volume, it doesn't really make sense as to why he's done so bad. And he gets a good matchup this week, so I think he's a guy that can break out at some lower ownership. And then lastly, the guy I want to mention is J.D. Mckissick. No Antonio Gibson this week. It's going to be J.D. McKissick's backfield, a guy that's a very good pass-catching back, similar to Gio Bernard. So we have 2 cheap pass-catching backs that are going to be valid on this slate this week. And he gets to take on the San Francisco 49ers, unfortunately, which is the 28th best team to target in terms of running backs, and they've been very good at containing the pass-catching backs as well. So the only thing that kind of stinks is that J.D. McKissick is taking on the Niners in a tough matchup. But I do think that his price tag doesn't reflect his upside. And, I think if Antonio Gibson was already known as being out, McKissick we would see at a much higher price tag than 4.9. So I like him this week. I think he's a great value play, and I think he does have the upside. Even though he's in a tough matchup, the price tag reflects, a good play for his upside in this one. So that is all of my top running back plays this week. Let's go ahead and start breaking down wide receivers. My top plays at the wide receiver position this week, it all starts with Davante Adams at the top. I absolutely love Davante Adams this week, taking on this Detroit Lions team. A big over-under for this game, 55 over-under, 31.25 implied total as mentioned, and Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball. Doesn't get much better than that. And Davante Adams' involvement in the offense doesn't get much better as well, because this is a guy that's just been getting a ton of work. Looking at his numbers, you can see he's got 99 targets on the year, 33 target share percentage of the offense, getting a ton of the offense's targets. A third of his offense, the throws in this offense is going Davante Adams' way. That's impressive. 103.7 air yards per game, 89.2 true catch rate, sure-handed, and he's got 18 red zone targets and 7 end zone targets. So Davante Adams, the complete package. I don't care how expensive he is. He's my number 1 play on the week for sure. 9.3, and the 9.3 price tag doesn't limit his appeal as far as my projections model is concerned, because I do expect him to just have a huge game. Put up 37 DK points last week, and that's not the first time we've seen a game like that from him this year. He had 47, 30, 36 3 weeks in a row, dipped down to 19, 26, and 18. Quote, dip down, and then he got back up there to 37 DK points, and I like him to keep it rolling in this one for sure in the matchup. The Detroit Lions secondary is not one that scares me. They haven't been able to slow down receivers, and they're definitely not going to be able to slow down Davante Adams because he's the best of the best. Looking at how they fared, they're the 9th best team to target for wide receivers, giving up 40.8 DK points a game to the wide receiver position. So Davante Adams is the full package. Full go for him this week. Tyreek Hill, I had mentioned, might be getting some lower ownership on Patty Mahomes. Same rule applies for Tyreek Hill because the Miami Dolphins aren't the best matchup. They are a pretty good secondary. 17th best team to target in terms of wide receivers, giving up 36.2 DK points a game, but doesn't really concern me because, as mentioned, these guys are just talented enough to be able to take on anyone with a 49.5 over-under and a 28.25 implied team total. there's going to be some scoring, and I think it all starts with Tyreek Hill at the wide receiver position for the Chiefs. As always, the main guy on the outside. 11, 15, 14, 18 targets the last 4 weeks. Tons of volume in this offense. You love to see it, and he is definitely a guy that I'll be going to this week. Keenan Allen, third on the list. Love this Chargers-Atlanta game. Love Keenan Allen. Tons of targets going his way. 23.25 implied total for his team. And Keenan Allen's involvement in the offense is just real good. 122 targets, that's absurd. 29 target share percentage, up there towards the 30%, similar to Devontae Adams. 81.5 air yards per game, 21 contested targets, and he's brought down 12 of those, and 13 red zone targets with 9 end zone targets. So Keenan Allen, the full package. Not concerned about the Atlanta Falcons secondary. They are the third best team target for wide receivers, giving up 42.9 DK points a game. And, I think Keenan Allen is just going to go crazy this week. He's definitely a top priority of mine. At a 7-7 price tag, you got to love him. 11, 10, 19 targets, and he hasn't put up a big game since that 38-point game against the New York Jets. And I think he's going to get back up there this week. I project Keenan Allen to just go wild this week, and he's definitely a priority of mine. Calvin Ridley on the other side. Chargers side of the ball. They're a little bit better against the wide receiver position. As mentioned, they're really bad against the QB position. They're literally the best target that you could have as far as QBs. But as far as wideouts are concerned, they're the 30th best team to target. So, that could put a little bit of a dampen on, wanting to target. Or no, I'm sorry. I'm talking about the Chargers. I'm thinking of the Atlanta. So we had gone over Atlanta and Keenan Allen. On this other side, though, we're talking about Calvin Ridley and the Atlanta side, and a pretty good matchup for the QBs. But the wide receivers is where they're a little bit better against. However, I don't care because I do project this game to be moving at such a quick pace that there's going to be a lot of opportunity, and Calvin Ridley is a guy that's going to get targeted a lot alongside Julio Jones. So I still have interest. I know it's not the most ideal matchup, but the way I project this game to move and with the opportunities that these guys are going to see, I think it outweighs the matchup. 10, 9, 9 targets the last 3 weeks, and I definitely have interest in him. And then don't forget about Julio Jones on this team as well. A guy that is questionable at practice, so interested to see how that will go. But he was held out of practice Thursday, so a second did not participate. So he might be not playing, which might make me like Calvin Ridley even more. Maybe not Calvin Ridley. Maybe we end up with some value plays in the Atlanta offense, like our favorite weapon early in the year. As I can't pronounce his name. I got to pull it up. The really long Zacchaeus. He's on the IR now, but he was the guy that we were chasing after early in the year. Now that he's on the IR, maybe we could be playing. Well, not maybe. We'll definitely be playing a Russell Gage if Julio Jones is out. So keep an eye on that one. I would definitely have interest in Julio if he's in there, but if not, Russell Gage gets bumped up. And it's looking like as the week goes on, Julio's being a little bit limited. Justin Jefferson taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a guy that I've been promoting every single week. Target share beast just seems to be getting it done week in and week out, and the price increase hasn't really been there until now. And more importantly, a guy that's getting down the field a ton of downfield targets. When looking at my Patreon package and upside at this wide receiver position, I always like to look at these E through G rows here. It really highlights which of these guys is getting down the field and which of these guys is getting downfield targets. Justin Jefferson is one that definitely stands out in that category. 17.7 yards per reception, 12.8 yards per target. Just good stuff there. 87.3 air yards per game, 91.2 true catch rate, sure-handed, and he's starting to get more red zone targets, 7 and 5 as far as red zone and end zone targets. So Justin Jefferson offers the complete package, and I'm going to continue to promote him because the guy's just been going crazy, and it's not like he's priced up in the 80K range yet, and he's been putting up 26 and 30 DK points the last 2 weeks. You love to see it. 12, 13, 5, 10 targets his last 4 weeks. Put him in your lineups and feel confident because he's kind of the full package. And then lastly, not to mention his matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who, when looking at my matchup chart, are the 7th best team to target in terms of wide receivers, giving up 40.8 DK points a game. They don't scare me off him. And then I do have interest in Adam Thielen as well on the same side, 7K, a guy that's very involved in the offense and getting many, many targets. When looking at his numbers, I'm not all too concerned about Justin Jefferson taking away from him because Adam Thielen's out there for 96% of his team snaps. He's got a 29 target share percentage. That means he's getting about 30% of his team's total targets. 13.4 average target distance. That's very respectable. 101.5 air yards per game. 18 contested targets, and he's come down with 8 of those, and then 15 red zone targets and 15 end zone targets. So Adam Thielen, very involved, and if you're looking at his game logs, you might be thinking, Justin Jefferson's taking away from him, which sucks, and I don't know if Adam Thielen is as viable of a play now, but I don't think that's the case, and I do think that Adam Thielen can continue to be a good play because he's put up 21, 35, 20 DK points the last 3 weeks, and when looking at his targets, he's got 11, 11, 7 targets, so definitely like Adam Thielen on the Minnesota Vikings. And then moving further along, you got A.J. Brown. I really like this Jacksonville, Tennessee game, as I mentioned. A.J. Brown, a little bit of a dud last week. It was mostly his friend Corey Davis doing most of the work, which I do have interest in Corey Davis as well. 53 over-under in this one. 5,700 for Corey Davis, and A.J. Brown is 7,300. So definitely looking to go to both of those guys, but A.J. Brown's the number one for sure. 7, 6, 7 targets the last 3 weeks, 16, 25, and 11 DK points. A little underwhelming with the 11 last week, and he is questionable. He missed practice for the second consecutive day Thursday, so we might end up with another wide receiver being ruled out. Keep an eye on that one. If that's the case, of course, Corey Davis is going to get a big bump up this week, so we'll have to keep an eye on that one. Moving further along, we got another guy, Mike Evans, who just was an addition to the injury report. All these guys, we got some late breaking news that they're limited participants or they're out. He was a non-participant Thursday. He was just downgraded to a did not participate through 2 injury reports, and Chris Godwin was a full go. So Evans, a guy that I was looking to play alongside Chris Godwin, really have interest in both of them. But if Evans is out, once again, we get another guy with more volume. Chris Godwin, a guy that's seen 9, 10, 6, 6 targets the last 4 weeks, becomes a much better play. Maybe a guy like Antonio Brown. We'll have to see as the Mike Evans news becomes official. But I definitely have interest in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers receiving core, the Dallas Cowboys receiving core. I definitely like against the Cincinnati Bengals. I had mentioned playing Andy Dalton. I'm stacking them up with Amari Cooper. I'm stacking them up with CeeDee Lamb. Those are the 2 guys I'm going to in this Dallas offense. Cincinnati, the 16th best team to target, giving up 36.5 DK points a game. They don't really scare me. And then looking at these guys' involvement in the offense, Amari Cooper, 86.6% of his team snaps. He's out there for a 22.1 target share percentage, getting lots of targets, 80.5 air yards per game, 91 true catch rate, sure-handed, and he's got the red zone targets, 9 red zone targets. And his friend CeeDee Lamb down here at the bottom, looking pretty impressive as well in his rookie campaign because he's been putting up pretty impressive numbers. So I definitely like both of those guys. I said it all starts with Amari Cooper, 6,500. I'm looking to pay up for him if I'm stacking up this Dallas Cowboys offense for sure. 9, 8, 7 targets the last 3 weeks, very involved. And then, like I said, I definitely do have interest in CeeDee Lamb on the cheaper end at a 4.8 price tag. As of how he's fared of late, you can see, he has kind of dulled down a little bit after the big performances, 10 and 7 after putting up 16, 16, and he had, 23, 25 early on in the season. However, the target share is still there, 7, 6, 7, 9 targets the last 4 times out. Definitely interested in CeeDee Lamb. As far as, we're moving further along here on the value end, there's definitely some clear teams that stand out. We have another injury report as far as, Jamison Crowder is concerned for these New York Jets. The news just came out on him being limited. Denzel Mims was ruled out. So going to have to keep an eye on that news as far as, Jamison Crowder is concerned because Perriman's a questionable tag as well. He was a limited participant. Jamison Crowder was limited at practice Thursday. So, and it seems to be something he was battling most of the year. So a little bit more of an optimistic downgrade for him than the last few guys that we've discussed. But anyways, the reason I bring that up is because Jamison Crowder and Rashad Perriman are both guys I'm looking to revalue this week for sure. in this Jets offense. I like them. And then I do like the Cincinnati receivers as well. Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins. The Chargers, I like Mike Williams. I like Michael Gallup on the cheap end for these Dallas Cowboys. Even though I mentioned, having interest in Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, I think Michael Gallup is too cheap. KJ Hamler on the very, very cheap end. And Gallup, as I mentioned, breaking down these guys, Michael Gallup is a guy that's actually been out there for a ton of snaps. 91.3% of his team snaps he's been out there. He just hasn't really put up the biggest numbers, but he actually has 14.5 yards per reception, 12.1 average targeted distance. So they are targeting him down the field with 22 air yards per reception. A guy that I think has some good upside and a guy that is really, really cheap. So I think that Michael Gallup could be kind of a sneaky upside play this week. And I don't know if he's going to gain any traction. I'm hoping that he doesn't because I'm real excited about playing him. 3-8 this week against Cincinnati. Looking at his game logs, he had 11 targets last week with 21.6 DK points. So unfortunately, that might draw a little bit more attention to him than I would like. But I do think that all the numbers match up, and I think he's a great play this week for sure. Tyler Boyd, I did mention 81.8% of his team snap he's playing on. He's got 93 targets, 21.6 target share percentage in the offense. You love to see that. And he does have 11 red zone targets as well. And then Mike Williams on the other side of the ball for the Chargers, 16.3 average target distance, 16.5 yards per reception, getting targeted down the field. He's second to Justin Jefferson on my sheet as far as yards per reception. First on my sheet for average target distance, so they're bombing it deep to Mike Williams, so you got to love to see that. 29 air yards per reception, and he's got 8 red zone targets and 8 end zone targets. So not only does he have it as far as, red zone targets are concerned, deep ball targets are concerned, he's kind of a full-rounded guy, and you love to see that. So he's going to provide you multiple avenues to that upside and getting there for you. And then when looking at how he's fared recently, you can see that he has 4,700 against Atlanta this week. As mentioned, the Atlanta secondary is a very weak one, and he had 9 targets last week. He only put up 8 DK points, but 9 targets. You'll love to see that. I think it's starting to draw up, and I'm definitely interested in him. Everything matches up. He's being targeted down the field. He's got the red zone targets, as mentioned, all that fun stuff. So these are the guys that I'm looking to in my value rankings this week, and the guys that I would be looking to play. And those are my top plays at the wide receiver position this week. Let's go ahead and start breaking down the tight ends. Moving on to the tight end position at the top, it all starts with the 2 guys that we talk about every single week because they're clearly the top 2 tight ends in the league, Travis Kelce, Darren Waller. As of now, healthy tight ends that are getting the job done week in and week out. Darren Waller with a huge performance recently, putting up a ridiculous total in last time out. Looking at his game logs, we can see he had 48 DK points last time out against the New York Jets. 17 targets, 13 receptions. So is that going to increase his ownership? I would say yes. Does he have a tough matchup? Yes, he does. Does Travis Kelce have a tough matchup? Yes, he does. Does it really matter? Probably not, because these 2 guys are always the top 2 options. If you can fit them in your lineups, do so. Of course, lineup construction is a thing, and we do have to decide if we're willing to punt the position, but these are the 2 guys when they're on the slate you have to contemplate on playing every single time. The Dolphins and the Colts. Travis Kelce gets the Dolphins, 26th best team to target. Darren Waller gets the Colts, 30th best team to target. Will matchup lower the ownership? I don't know. I would anticipate probably not, just because these 2 guys are such guaranteed plays. And after getting burnt by punt tight ends recently, I think people are going to be more likely to go back to the more guaranteed plays. But it'll be interesting to see how lineup construction shakes out and all that fun stuff. 30 DK points last time out for Travis Kelce, 29, 28, 27, 3 weeks in a row after putting up 16 in Week 12 against Tampa Bay. He's been up near 30 DK points, 4 times out of the last 5 weeks. So I think that just goes to show his upside. He's definitely the number 1 tight end that I'm promoting every single week. Just not that makes me a genius. Not that you guys don't know that, but top play. Hunter Henry taking on the Atlanta Falcons. not a team that we're too worried about. Clearly, I've been talking about targeting these Falcons a lot in this video. Sixth best team to target in terms of tight ends. They don't scare me at all. Looking at his total involvement in the offense in comparison to some of these other tight ends, we should first mention Darren Waller and Travis Kelce. I don't even need to say this, but 27.1 target share percent for Darren Waller. Tons of targets his way. 23.1 target share percentage for Travis Kelce. So that just backs up my plays even more. 13.2 yards per reception for Travis Kelce, getting down the field a little more than Darren Waller. And as far as red zone targets are concerned, they're both getting in the red zone. And so is Hunter Henry. 17.9 target share percentage, 55.4 air yards per game. And the red zone targets are there. 10 red zone targets and 8 end zone targets. So Hunter Henry, definitely a guy that I'm going to be playing this week, along with many of his other friends in this Chargers offense, because they're in a great spot. 13, 14, 13 DK points 3 weeks in a row after putting up 1.5 last week. You got a price dip down to 4.4, which just makes me like him even more. That's too cheap. Going to be having a lot of Hunter Henry this week for sure. Moving further along, as far as guys I'm interested in, a few guys on the cheap end, a few guys in the mid-range. Noah Fant, Hayden Hurst taking on the Carolina Panthers and the Los Angeles Chargers. Looking at how those two teams fare, the Panthers are the 8th best team to target in terms of tight ends, and the Chargers are the 15th. So both teams not really too scared to target them. And looking at how these guys are involved, let's see, we got Hurst first, 76.1 snap share percentage out there for quite a few snaps, 50.5 target share percentage, 7.6 average target distance, pretty much the full package. And he's got 7 red zone targets and 3 end zone targets, so I definitely like him. Noah Fant, on the other hand, definitely a good play. If I'm leaning one, I'd probably go towards Hurst as we're breaking this down. But Noah Fant does have 17.6 target share percentage, getting targeted a little bit more. The only problem is the red zone targets haven't quite been there as far as targeting him in the end zone. But nevertheless, a good play, and a good play that grades out pretty well in my projections. On the cheap end, I have interest in Jordan Reed, Logan Thomas, Jordan Akins, and Mo Alley Cox. Looking at those guys' numbers, Mo Alley Cox is definitely my top punt play, because when you're looking at his numbers, he has a 13.7 yards per reception number, and then 92.32 catch rate, very sure-handed, and they're just targeting him down the field a lot. When it comes down to it, they're targeting him down the field when he is getting targeted, and he's got high upside for a minimum-priced guy. Jordan Akins, a guy that's been getting decent involvement in the offense, 9.8 yards per target, 12.5 yards per reception, and he's got 4 end zone targets, 4 red zone targets, so they are targeting him in the red zone as well. And don't forget about Logan Thomas at the top, because Logan Thomas is playing a ton of snaps. He actually tops the guys that I am suggesting in terms of snaps played. He tops Darren Waller, he tops Hunter Henry, he tops Travis Kelce. He has a 16.4 target share percentage, 7.8 average target distance, 13.9 air yards per reception, 18 contested targets. He's brought down 6 of those, and 12 red zone targets, 4 end zone targets. Logan Thomas is too cheap this week. Grades out to be a great play. I know he's taking on the Niners. It's not the best matchup. Looking at my tight end matchup chart, they are the very, very best team against the tight end position. So, a little bit of a disclaimer there, but I don't care. 3-3 is too cheap for him. When you're looking at the numbers he's been putting up, you're looking at his involvement in the offense. I think that he makes for a great play, and if the matchup's going to make people, be afraid of playing him, I'm not afraid of playing him. 24 DK points, 13 DK points the last 2 weeks out. And it's really the price tag and his upside and his amount of time he's out there on the field. He's just out there for a ton of time. He's getting the targets. He's getting all of that good stuff. All the things that we're looking at for a good play in our fantasy lineups outside of the matchup. But I think we can go ahead and waive that and go ahead and play some Logan Thomas this week and feel good about it. So that is my final look at this Week 14 NFL DFS slate on DraftKings, some of my top plays. If you enjoyed the content, please leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. And then don't forget to leave your comment of some of your favorite plays down below in the comments. I always like to hear your guys' feedback. Who are you high on? Who's your hot takes? Who's going to go off this week? And then lastly, if you are interested, I do have Patreon packages over there on Patreon where you get access to my projections, rankings, tools, all of that fun stuff. Help support me. Greatly appreciate it, guys. And I think it's going to help you with your lineups. Link below in the description. Appreciate you guys tuning into this one. I'll see you in the next one where I'm going to start breaking down my top stacks for this Week 14 slate. Wish you all the best of luck, and we will see you in the next video.